people used Christianity to legitimate, to give divine legitimation to slavery. So if we don't also bring in reason and experience, it makes it hard for us to distinguish between what might be the kernel of divine truth in the Bible from what we might call cultural husk. You ever shucked corn? I hated shucking corn. It wasn't until I was about 4 years old that I realized if you cut the end off, you can squeeze it out and not have to worry about all those threads, right? There's a YouTube video on that. Look it up. It'll save you a lot of time. But there is, the Bible is given to us in human language, and the writers didn't enter into a cultural vacuum, and so they were writing from the perspective of their own culture. They were human beings. And although God does communicate divine truths through these stories and through this text, it's always mediated knowledge, and it's always mediated from a particular perspective, which means there's not only going to be divine truth, there's going to be humanity in the Bible. And part of the humanity in the Bible is the ancient culture in which it was written. And so we have to be able to distinguish between the ancient culture, which mediates through these stories the divine truth. And we are not going to talk about this today. We can have coffee if you want to go home late. But this is the central issue on the topic of homosexuality in the church. It all boils down to whether or not the prohibitions in the Bible are equivalent to cultural statements about slavery, the subjugation of women, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Or whether or not that is not a part of the cultural husk of the medium, but it is indeed part of God's divine revelation. People that take a strong stance against homosexuality are doing so on the assumption that it is not a part of the culture of the ancient world, but it is divine revelation. It is a moral law that is revealed by God, and if we contradict it, by definition, we're sinning. On the other hand, the people who are trying to argue for equality in the church, not only in the state but in the church, for gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people, are arguing that it's not part of the divine revelation, it's part of the cultural husk that is part of the humanity of the Bible. That's for you to decide, but I want you to know that's what it really comes down to, right? And we have to think through these things carefully.